Israel's warfare in Gaza is consistent with the characteristics of a genocide. That was one of the findings from a committee, special UN committee that investigates Israel's practices. In the past, you've said that the Secretary General, it's not his role to call something a genocide or not. It's up to the courts, essentially. Is that still his belief?
That continues to be his belief. That doesn't stop him from, I think, in his representatives, most lately Joyce Monsieur, speaking in very clear and vivid terms about what we think is going on the ground.
And can you just explain for people that aren't UN experts per se, that saying, why doesn't the Secretary General call it a genocide if other people are? Can you explain that?
Look, other people will say what they want to say. From the Secretary General's standpoint, the labeling of an action as genocide has to come from a judicial authority. We've seen it happen in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We saw it happen also in Rwanda, to name two others. Deji, then Pam.
Yes, on the meeting on the travel of Undersecretary General Lacroix to Israel, we know that today Defense Minister Katz said that Israel has already expanded their operation in southern Lebanon. Will Mr. Lacroix talk to the Israeli officials only on the situation of UNIFIL, or will he also urge Israel to, let's say, halt the operation in South Lebanon?
I mean, our advocacy and his advocacy on what is going on in Lebanon will continue to be the same, which is to push for a diplomatic solution, to put for cessation of hostilities and the full implementation of the Security Council Resolution 1701.
And yesterday, Damascus was attacked by Israeli airstrikes, and that, according to Syrian media, 15 people were killed and 16 injured. Israel claimed that they actually hit a military related target. So any position from the
We're
UN?
very much aware of these reports of airstrikes. I mean, from Secretary General's point of view, he reiterates his deep concern over the prospect of further escalation of violence in what we all know is an extremely volatile region and an extremely volatile time. He further cautions that any miscalculation could lead to a broader conflict and calls on all concerned to exercise the utmost efforts to avoid any further escalation. And he reminds all parties to respect their obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law.
Do you think Israel really care about that?
I think, listen, first of all,
It's been several times, right?
I think it's a question of that to ask the people you want to get the answer from. And second, I think it is clear to anyone and to the naked eye that the whole region and many parties in the region have blatantly disregarded international humanitarian law and international law.
I understand that the term genocide is for the Secretary General to use it is a legal term, but there are other terms that he can use. And as I asked you, I think last week or maybe 10 days ago, about him warning against possible ethnic cleansing in Gaza, as he was quoted by The Guardian. And you said back then that that he doesn't think that, I'm paraphrasing, that it's happening now. So my question to you is, why doesn't he, given the fact that his representatives are talking about, in humanitarian organizations, are talking about crimes committed, etc., why doesn't he use other terms beside genocide, terms that he can use now?
I think we can all look back and do a word search on the way he's described the situation in Gaza. I think those have been very vivid, very clear to us. People can argue that he should use different words and different terminology and stronger words or weaker words, but I think he's been very clear in calling out the violations of law of international law, of international humanitarian law that we have repeatedly seen.
Question, Human Rights Watch issued a report today in which they say that Israeli authorities have caused the massive, deliberate forced displacement of Palestinian civilians in Gaza and the widespread destruction of much of the territory since October 2023 and are responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The evidence shows displacement has been systematic and part of the Israeli state policy. End of quote. Do you have any comments on that report?
Look, there will need to be accountability for all the crimes that have been committed in this conflict. And one of the things we've also been saying is that evidence needs to be kept, things need to be documented, but there will need to be accountability one way or another for what we have seen in this conflict.
Sorry, I am just last two questions. One thing to clarify, you said about law and order issues in the area that you try to deliver aid to. My question is, are these areas under the Israeli control? Is it?
Sorry, say again?
Are these areas under the Israeli military control, or where are these areas exactly? Where you had some people shooting at your convoys?
Well, you know, there's it. You could argue that Israel has the ultimate responsibility as the occupying power for the maintenance of law and order right now in Gaza throughout it. The point is that there are large parts of Gaza where, if not all, I mean, as we've been saying, let me rephrase it, no place in Gaza is safe. Some areas we have seen active activities by armed gangs, right? That are looting, and that's what we've just seen. There needs to be a better ecosystem of security for the humanitarian operations, and one way to do that would be for this conflict to end.
I have one more.
I think
sorry,
one last
okay.
one.
Yeah. Okay. There are some media reports or social media reports. If you could confirm, I'm not sure if they're true, but according to these reports that WFP, UNICEF, and WHO are about to terminate some employers' contracts who are originally from Gaza or were working in Gaza and left Gaza because of the situation. And according to these reports, they were asked by these organizations to go back to Gaza, or their contracts will be
Yes, well, I mean, I read the long post online. We've asked for some information on how to respond to that, to the questions that you raised. So the only thing I know is what I've read so far, and I've asked people to give me some information so I can answer the question you've just asked.
Thank you.
Stefano.
Thank you, Stefan. Yesterday, Philippe Lazzarini answering a question on if he will call President-elect Trump before January 20 to try to convince him to help him to save UNRWA, he basically said yes. Is the Secretary General, does the Secretary General want to do the same thing? I mean,
As I said
to
you,
call
as
Trump
I said
before.
to you, I think as I said to you before, as soon as I have something to report on contact between us and the incoming administration, I will share that with you. Adla.
Going back to Lebanon and Monsieur Lacroix, he told reporters today that the UN is looking to bolster peacekeeping troops in Lebanon to help support Lebanese army. Is this something that's been discussed at the Security Council?
It's a valid question. I don't know.
Okay.
Sherwin, then we'll go back to you, Edie.
Steph, just on this question of genocide, would a determination of genocide in Israel produce a change in response from the UN? Would it change? What would it change if there were to be a genocide determination in Israel in terms of the posture of this organization?
Well, it depends what part of the organization you're talking about. I mean, if you're talking about I mean, our humanitarian work right now, which is on the front lines, will continue. I mean, we will go to where the needs are. We will continue to try to meet the needs of people who need our assistance. I'm not going to speculate on what may or may not happen. Obviously, a determination by a court would have legal implications, but we will continue our humanitarian work.
And then in terms of this long list of accountability that you speak of, there will be accountability, you say, for all the crimes that have been committed.
There will need to be, I said.
I mean, what would a timeline for that kind of accountability? It sort of seems that it's sort of a knee-jerk reaction to say there will be accountability. That never
No,
really
I said
happens.
there will need to be accountability.
There hasn't been the level of accountability from the Darfur genocide that one would expect. So what are we talking about when we actually say accountability, or is it just a sort of word salad?
I don't think it's I think it's a very serious topic. I also think that the international community, the international system, has, one could argue, in the last 50 years or even more, strengthened its systems to have accountability. Is it at the level that it should be to meet the victims? I mean, if I were a victim of an international crime over the last decades, I would probably say no. But does it exist? Yes. Have we seen it? Yes. Does it take time? Sadly, yes. Edie, let's get back to the ground.
Just a quick clarification. The 14 trucks that were looted, that all took place in central Gaza, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Right. And do we know how close they were to getting to the warehouse in Deir al-Balah?
I can try to get you a bit more detail, but we're not talking about great distances. I mean, the Gaza Strip is not a very wide area of land.